Hello, Periscope. Hope everybody's doing all right tonight out there on Periscope. My name is Matthew. I am with Dyson Photo Tutoring out of Central Arkansas. I get a lot of questions from a lot of my clients, a lot of my students who are interested in upgrading their camera. They're not really sure where they want to upgrade to. One of the biggest questions that I get is they read or see or hear somebody talking about full frame. And I get curious looks all the time. Wow, what is full frame? I don't understand. Do I already have a full frame camera? Do I need a full frame camera? When it comes to whether or not you already have a full frame camera, I can guarantee you that you'll already know if you have one. One of the biggest ways that you'll know if you have a full frame camera is they're very expensive. So you'll know whether or not you have paid for a full frame camera. Full frames tend to start in the neighborhood of about $2,000 and just kind of work their way up. So what is full frame? And do you need it? Well, the biggest thing about full frame is with all digital cameras, whether it's a small point and shoot camera, whether it's a mirrorless small compact camera that still has your interchangeable lenses, whether it's a small digital SLR like this Nikon D3000 that I have of my daughter's here, you can take the lens off here, or whether it's one of the larger SLRs. All of them have a little chip inside the camera box that is called the sensor. Okay, the sensor is the thing that takes the picture. Think of it as the 35 millimeter negative in an old film camera. Now, full frame versus crop sensor has to do with the size of this sensor. It has to do with how big is the sensor that's actually capturing the image. A full frame sensor is the same size and dimensions as a 35 millimeter negative. Hence, full frame. It is a full 35 millimeter frame, just like an old film negative. With both of these smaller cameras here, they have what's called a crop sensor. In Nikon and Sony, which this is a little Sony NEX, but with Nikon and Sony, there's what is called a 1.5 crop. Canon has a 1.6 crop. Olympus and a few others have a 2-time crop. It kind of varies throughout the different brands and manufacturers. But the most common, Nikon, Canon, and Sony. Nikon and Sony will have a 1.5 and Canon will have a 1.6. And what does that mean? There's all these numbers being thrown out. Well, what that means is they are a slightly smaller sensor. Okay? So if we have a 100 millimeter lens put on any of the cameras that we're looking through, they're going to give us a certain field of view, right? Well, if you put that on a full frame camera, just like it was for a 35 millimeter SLR, the 100 millimeter lens would give you a 100 millimeter field of view. It would give you that field of view just like it would on an old film camera. Where if you put that same lens on a crop sensor camera, because the sensor is smaller, what it's going to do is it's actually going to magnify your lens focal length by 1.5. So where a 100 millimeter lens on your full frame camera would give you a particular field of view, on your crop sensor cameras you're going to get a more magnified field of view. So there's a bit of a benefit for like sports photographers, wildlife photographers, depending on the type of photography that you're into. But what you're going to get, again, is instead of a 100 millimeter lens view, you're going to get a 150 millimeter lens view. You take that focal length of whatever lens you put on it, and you get to multiply it by 1.5. So if that means that you gain telephoto with your crop sensor cameras, doesn't that mean that they're the best? They're better? Not necessarily. Depends on what you're doing. With a full frame camera, you have a larger sensor. Okay, we've discussed that, we've determined that. A larger sensor is going to give you the traditional field of view of whatever the lens is designed for. What that means for landscape photographers, for professional wedding photographers, portrait photographers, is that if you get a wider lens, you keep your wide field of view. It's a bit harder to get the highest quality lenses in the crop sensor cameras than it is in full frame, because in full frame you get the full wide field of view. Most of your professional lenses, most of your professional photographers will at least have something in the neighborhood of like a 24 to 70 millimeter lens. And a 24 millimeter lens on that full frame gives you 24 wide. Okay, so what does that mean for landscape photographers? It means that the field of view is very, very wide. It means that you're going to have a great wide angle. You're going to get more of your scene. This is very beneficial for wedding photographers as well. If you're in a small, cramped space and you're needing to shoot your venue, this wide field of view is phenomenal. It gives you big, wide wedding parties, lets you shoot a full room in an enclosed space. It's very, very, very beneficial. So, again, which is better for you? Full frame, by nature, is going to give you the better photo. Now, I do better photo in quotation marks again because technology is getting better and better all the time, and crop sensor cameras are getting sharper and sharper even though they have a smaller sensor. The traditional benefit of a full frame digital SLR is the full frame not only does it give you the wider field of view, but it gives you better low light performance, better color, better overall sharpness, and better contrast. And the reason for this is because it's a larger sensor. It all goes back to that sensor size. With the sensor being larger, the pixel buckets are bigger. The pixel buckets are the things on the sensor that capture the light. They're the things that make up the resolution of the photo. Well, with the sensor being larger and the pixel buckets being larger pixel buckets are going to retain better information. Better information translates into better photo. Again, crop sensor cameras, they're getting better and better all the time. Okay, so there's not necessarily going to be a just cut and dry quality difference for the layman photographer. Okay, now, so what are some of the benefits of crop sensor? Okay, we've discussed the benefits of full frame. You get a wider field of view. You get much, much better low light performance. That is somewhere where the full frame cameras really are excelling, is high quality images at very high ISOs. So better, cleaner, brighter pictures in low light. Overall, just better saturation and just better depth to your images in full frame. With your crop sensor, typically, they tend to be faster. Okay, so if you're a sports photographer, if you're a wildlife photographer, high-end crop sensor style cameras do tend to be the sought-after camera for a lot of those types of shooters. And the reason for this is you get more crop on your lenses, which is great. If you're a sports photographer and the action is just a little too far away, a crop sensor camera magnifies that image naturally. There's no digital zoom or digital crop. It's all going to happen before anything ever happens inside the camera. So before any editing or digital crop takes place, it's going to happen naturally. Again, they're faster. They tend to shoot on a faster frame per second. A good high-end crop sensor camera will typically shoot anywhere between 7 and 10 frames per second. Full frame cameras tend to hover more around the 5 or 6 frame per second at their high end. So again, which one is better? It really depends on the photographer that you are. However, you will see that most of the pro photographers out there are gravitating toward full frame. Biggest reason is that low light performance and just the overall better image depth. If you just see a picture taken and you're glancing at the photo, it's going to be really, really, really hard to say, that was a full frame camera or that was a crop sensor camera. It's really tough to do that. But if you do compare an image side by side and just lay them down and fine-tooth comb the images, you can generally tell which was taken with a full frame just because of, again, better low light performance, better color depth, things of that nature. I hope this has cleared up a few things. I know that it may have just caused more questions than it answered. But again, full frame, larger imaging sensor, same size as a 35mm negative. Great for low light, great for width. Crop sensor tend to be a little smaller. They are faster, and you get more telephoto, but you might sacrifice some light quality or some image quality in the low lighting situations. Either way, there's that. If you have any questions, feel free to email me at dysonphototutoring@gmail.com, or please go to the website, dysonphototutoring.com. You can contact me through there. You can ask me questions, read the blog. You can comment on the blog posts. Facebook, I'm on Facebook and Twitter as well. Visit me on all my platforms. Definitely interact. Ask me questions. I hope to talk to you guys again soon, and we'll be coming back next week with a few more tips and tricks, and I hope to see you then. See you, Periscope. Have a good night.